This episode of Nerds on Coffee is brought to you by the Broglie Box. It is an all-inclusive quarterly subscription box designed to promote optimal mental health and overall wellness. Each beautifully designed box includes full-size curated gift items such as essential oils, stress and anxiety combating tools, coloring therapy books, candles, aromatherapy, journals, calendars, self-help guides, and more. Broglie Box products are sourced from well-known health and wellness brands, as well as small, independent crafters and artisans. Each box also includes a quarterly issue of Peace of Mind magazine, featuring timely and useful articles, guides, and visual tools from a variety of published psychologists, psychiatrists, and mental health bloggers. Broglie Box is an all-encompassing resource kit for those who need support or want to help someone else. Right now, we're partnering with them and we're offering a promo code. So if you go to brogliebox.com and enter NERDS10, that'll get you 10% off your first box. And hopefully that will inspire you to want to continue the subscription, keep it going, give a box as a gift. Again, that's brogliebox.com. That's BROGLIEBOX.com. And enter in NERDS10, NERDS10. And I'll get you 10% off your first box. Continue to dive in, learn about the company, learn about the box, and find out how you can use it for yourself or for someone else. And stick with us.
It's coffee. It's comics. It's music.
It's Nerds on Coffee.
I think I have like a disease.
Well, first off,
Do you have like a cover for this?
no, you're fine.
That is the cover
Okay.
for this.
Oh.
Welcome.
That's special for you. Everyone else
Welcome,
gets other
ladies and
colors.
gentlemen, to Frost Hernandez's Psychology Class 101.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah, I know. This is therapy.
You have no idea what I'm about to say.
So, guys, thanks.
Are we on air?
Oh, we're totally live. I got Kyle here wearing some rose shit shirt.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about you in anything but black. It really,
I know.
It dampens the
Well,
colored
see,
arms.
I know.
We're executives, so we wear the black.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, I'm a
we're-
cartoon character.
He's
I
a
wear the same
creative.
thing every day. Well, but it takes away from what Matt's trying to say is I think that it's like it takes away from the fact that I'm a bearded man of color.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah, so that's a thing. He is a bearded man of color. So I know that this episode we're going to try this new format where you introduce the guest beforehand, but just in case that sounds really awkward, I want to introduce the guest also here.
yeah.
So we have Frost Hernandez, CEO and co-founder of YAHYAH Music. Pretty tight. Former project manager at Sony Red. Worked with me on Logan.
You have got it all wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So far you're failing.
Wow. Well, why don't you introduce yourself then? Let's go, tough guy.
It's gonna be like his intro is gonna be like amateur quinoa enthusiast.
Wow, your producer's really prepped y'all for this
Hike,
one, huh?
yeah.
hike lover, dog sniffer, avocado toast enthusiast.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
moved
playing.
to
Continue.
the wrong
Keep going.
coast.
I'm just joking with you.
No, but in all seriousness, this episode's something I've been looking really forward to. As I've told you, you are maybe one of 3 people in the world that I would trust to stay in my home without me, which you have since you've been in LA and I've been on tour.
What's left of it?
What's left of it? Yes, he did. He did almost nuke my whole house. It was,
Oh, no.
I came back and it was a disaster.
Oh.
You know, there's food on the floor. There's dead cats in the corner.
You're a neat freak too, so
Yeah.
that probably drove you insane.
Do you want to what's the word I'm looking for? Defend yourself?
Elaborate or defend yourself.
I have nothing to say.
That's fair.
This whole podcast, that's what he means by you don't even know what he's going to say. It's nothing.
It's nothing.
Could
Yeah.
I just plead the fifth the entire 30 minutes or however long we're on and just say like, no
1,000%.
comment?
Yeah.
Have you ever
no
had a guest
comment.
who just said no comment?
No,
No.
but I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
If you were the one that did that first.
Well, when you start getting into politics and you start bringing in like high-profile people, not like
Right.
not like idiots
Right.
like me, they're just gonna plead the fifth.
Well, we've never had someone say no comment, but a couple of times we've had people like after we're recording pull one of us aside and be like, "Hey, man, so actually like maybe like half an hour ago when we were talking about this, like I actually can't really have that get out. Can you
Yeah.
edit that out?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, totally." So
It's pretty funny.
It's really funny. I had to take a couple of things out of a couple of people's episodes because they told some like stories of like high profile people that they work with, and they're like, "Oh, it was funny in the moment, but actually." on the fat chance that they actually hear this, it's gonna cause an issue. So can you take that out? I'm like, yeah, totally.
But yeah, let's dive into it. So you have made the leap about what, 4 months ago, 5 months ago?
Yeah. So first, I'm not the CEO of YAHYAH. I'm a partner in YAHYAH.
Oh, really?
I have a business partner.
Yes, but I thought that you were still the CEO and he was the executive creative director, and you were co-founders.
No, we're just partners.
You're throwing a lot of titles around right now.
A lot of titles, but
No, it's all good.
that was one. What was the other thing
That you're a project manager.
I'm a product manager. There's a difference. No, there is. We can talk about that on this podcast. So the difference between a project manager, at least the way that I see it, and product marketing. But yeah, that's what I did for the past. I sound so pretentious.
You do.
Edit all this out.
No. But we love this.
Absolutely not.
So come on, talk about it. Where you're from New York.
I'm from Texas.
Oh yeah. Yes, me too. What part?
Your producers need a raise. Who prepped you for this show?
No, I knew you were from Texas. I just wanted that reaction.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. Wait,
No,
are you from
sometimes-
Texas?
He's from Texas also.
Kyle, where are you from?
Yeah. So I was born in Sherman and then moved to Oklahoma. Was raised in Oklahoma and then moved back to Lubbock for 10 years.
Oh,
So West
wow.
Texas.
Okay. I'm from San Antonio originally.
Oh, nice. My whole family still lives in Lubbock. My sister and her husband live in Houston.
I've never been to Lubbock.
There's not
Oprah
anything
has.
there. I know she has. And they talk about it still.
Do they?
Yeah.
I watched the whole trial. I
Not a
remember.
lot going on in Lubbock.
Do tell me.
You don't remember the whole Oprah?
No, what happened?
Well, remember when she... Well, you don't remember. You don't... Clearly, I don't know where you were at during the 90s. Oprah had made a comment about beef. Do you remember? She had said that she didn't... On television, on her national show, she said that she didn't like beef, or she was... it was during the whole... whatever going on, and the ranchers and the cattlemen and the beef industry sued her. But it was a very, very... You don't remember this?
Yeah. It just sounds so ridiculous to
but
say.
They sued her.
That is incredible that she has so much power that she just said something. Free speech.
Right.
I'm assuming she won, right? Because it's freedom of speech.
100%. But
right.
But you understand that. But you understand that it was a massive part of her life where she actually had to relocate to Lubbock because it was a serious, serious lawsuit. Obviously, you're talking about a woman who has a lot of money.
Well, in
and
the
a lot
90s,
of
she didn't have that much
influence.
money.
I mean, she still had a ton
She
of power.
had a lot of influence.
Yeah.
And she actually, I think I don't remember how long the trial was, but it was long enough for her to relocate the entire show
Oh, yeah.
to Lubbock. Do you remember? Didn't she have the
at
show?
least a couple of months. That's just bizarre. And that's how, I think that's a perfect example. I mean, you know this, you're from Texas. I think Texas more so than the rest of the South, because Texas is the South adjacent. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
But they're just really, really defensive about everything. You can't say anything about Texas. You can't say anything about anything that has to do with Texas. It was extremely prideful.
I think that when she actually said it, beef sales, I'm not even joking, went down.
Oh yeah,
And that
I'm
was the
sure.
whole.
That was the reason. It wasn't just that she
case.
said it. It affected.
No. It affected their sales, and everyone then went. I don't remember the
Right,
facts of it,
but on the flip side, Jeff Bezos said that he was gonna enter the supermarket industry, and that lowered every supermarket company by 30%, and he bought Whole Foods on the cheap. So isn't that just business?
Yeah, well.
I guess. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing,
But no,
business.
getting back to Texas, it's isn't it true that it's the only state that can secede from the union if they wanted to? A and B. Also, I think they can have their flag at the same level
yes, they can.
as
As an American
Because
flag.
that- the
Texas
American
is
flag.
technically a republic.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Texas is technically a republic, and Texas has the three resources, right? Three resources that you need to be able to be self-sustaining. So they can power all the oil, and then they
Yeah.
have enough oil that they can export it to the other states, which is why it could succeed. Two, it has I think it has the second most wind turbines.
Oh yeah,
in,
lots of
in
wind
America.
energy.
Yeah, the wind energy
A lot
there.
of wind energy.
Yeah, it just has all of these things. But my favorite fact about Texas, and I've said this before, is that it only has 3 pages of amendments in their
that's right.
state constitution, and there's more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are free in the entire world. That's a real fact.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
amazing.
had no idea.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, most people don't. I think Texas likes it that way.
Yeah, and the other fact, breakfast tacos are like the best.
Oh,
invention
absolutely.
ever.
Breakfast taco is very different
And
from a
one
breakfast
burger is
burrito.
overrated.
That is a debate.
Yeah, I mean, the
That
fact
is
that
a
it's
true
debatable,
debate.
though, means that it's like,
it's not
maybe.
even actually. You know what? It's not even a debate. There is a difference between a breakfast burrito and a breakfast taco.
Oh, 1,000%.
Wait, so which one do you like more?
Breakfast taco,
Breakfast tacos, they're smaller, and so you can get more of a variety. You can get
and
like
it's a
4.
homemade flour tortilla.
It's homemade.
normally.
Have you had a holy guacamole breakfast burrito?
Who?
Yeah.
From where?
I have. No, that's what I'm saying. But like the breakfast burritos are incredible.
Well, I'll
the
bring you
best,
tomorrow.
The best breakfast burrito in the world
No, it's like amazing.
is still. It's like not a breakfast taco. Breakfast. It's its own category.
I
It's different.
understand.
There's a place in Los Feliz called Home State.
Oh, I've been.
That does breakfast
Oh,
tacos.
it's so good.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
I
it's so
think the
good.
thing that I like about breakfast tacos over breakfast burritos, even though I love breakfast burritos, is that with breakfast tacos you get the same amount of food, but because it's smaller portions, I can get lots of different styles of tacos in one sitting, and I can kind of like get like different styles of protein, like different seasonings, things like that, and it's more fun.
So
More of a
basically, you're
variety.
saying you like tacos more because you're an indecisive fuck and you can't just choose one item to eat.
No, I just like to eat as many animals as possible in one meal, and if I can get pork and chicken and steak at the same time, I will. That's why I love
That's
barbecue
why
so
you're a
much.
woodsman.
2.0.
That's why I love barbecue so much. Yeah.
No, he eats a lot still.
You probably eat more, right? Just because you gave up all the carbs and the processed food, probably, right? So now it's just like
Yeah, well, I mean,
goes
I'm just
through
trying
you.
to eat better. That's really all it is. I'm just trying to like everything that I'm doing, I'm just trying to do in moderation and do reasonably so that I can sustain it. So that's why like it's taken a little bit longer than I would have liked, because everything that I'm doing I actually want to still be doing down the road. And if like I feel like if I set my goals too aggressive, then it could probably be pretty easy to like
Falter.
veer away from them or get a little burnout and be like, oh shit, like
that's where I'm at.
You know, and so
I don't know any I don't
yeah,
have any
just start
balance.
simple. So I was the same way. So it's like start simple, and just the only wrong way to do it is to not do it. So just keep it simple.
Totally.
You know.
All right, so
Yeah. So we
enough.
met through Red, but before that,
You had met,
well, no, we hadn't met before that. But like Frost and I met through when you were still at Red Music.
right? So you met back in Texas. You're saying when you were like 13?
No. Oh yeah. Yes. No.
At the rodeo.
At the rodeo.
Eating breakfast tacos.
I was eating breakfast tacos, scouting, and he was playing.
That's right.
And I was 10.
10.
That sounds exactly like when you were definitely that 10-year-old wearing like a top hat, maybe even like a
Wait, do you know this for a fact?
no, I'm just
Oh,
assuming.
this is absolutely correct. No, you have no idea the stories.
That's incredible.
So you were in a top hat as a kid. You had notepads with you. You were like a young scout looking at music.
100%. I would always wear a suit
Always.
in elementary school.
That's amazing.
Why?
100%.
What's your reasoning?
To let everyone know that he's better than them.
No, but seriously, who
little bit, yeah.
ingrained that on you?
Myself.
There was never a grandfather, grandparent, mother, sister.
I'm the youngest of 7.
Okay.
I'm the black sheep.
So you made a conscious decision to go, I'm gonna like be
Bow ties
I'm gonna
and-
be in
and-
control
Wait, so when
of
you
how
say youngest
people
of
see
7,
me.
how much of a distance is there between 6?
A lot.
A lot. So you were
The
literally
distance between Texas and New York.
really.
So you were kind of like an only child by the time you got to like your teen years.
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff like
true.
that.
So, and maybe wearing these suits and stuff was your way of
Empowerment.
proving that you were worth it.
Well, not even necessarily. I mean, I don't know. I was when I was a kid, I had a wild imagination, and
What happened?
what happened?
Yeah, you have more of a domestic imagination now.
You're probably correct. No, you're right. And I'm just all of the pain in my life right now is trying to get back to the 10-year-old self.
That's amazing.
Aren't we all?
That's great.
Aren't
No,
we
but
all?
you know what? That is actually a really, really good point. But when I was a kid, I would wear suits, and I would pretend. I wouldn't pretend I knew. I thought the teacher, her name was Miss Reynolds. I was in the 3rd grade, 4th grade. She flunked me, actually. I flunked the 4th grade. Thought
Did
that
you redo it?
Yeah, she flunked me, and I had to redo it. That was a traumatic part of my life, but I thought that she was my secretary, and I would call her my secretary. So I was also very
amazing.
ADD, so I was always the kid that distracted everyone.
Yeah, totally.
And would
Same.
never allow people to work. So she had a back closet
No
in back
way.
of her desk. and she would call that my office.
That's amazing.
And I would completely play into it. And I remember she had a big tortoise shell, a real tortoise shell.
That's awesome.
That was just back there, and I loved to go play with it. So I used it as my desk, and we set up a fax machine and telephone, and I had a desk. And I remember we had in elementary school they had mentors.
Yeah.
Right? And people of the city, established people, lawyers, doctors, the mayor, whatever, they would come and they would mentor a kid once a week. And mine, I think I was paired up with the city manager, very successful guy.
Gotcha.
And he fed into it, right?
That's awesome.
He would literally send faxes to the main office downstairs. So when I would show up to my class, I would look at Miss Reynolds and say, "I have my faxes arrived." And she would come, she would deliver them to my office. I'd slam the door, and I would be there all day. And she was probably grateful for that because I meant she actually could teach. And
She failed you after all that.
Fucked up, right?
So she played into it.
Fucked up.
And then she failed you.
Fucked up. Yeah, exactly.
But did you fail all the tests also?
I don't think I did the tests.
Well, I think that's
you just have big boy shit going
You know,
on, man.
I had big things to do. I remember having meetings on my own.
I'm not gonna lie. When we do our follow-up Frost podcast, we need to bring Miss Reynolds on.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like,
can we find Miss Reynolds?
When I was a kid, I would have board meetings by myself, and I would have meetings with presidents of companies, presidents of countries, ambassadors. I would conduct 80-member orchestras, in my bedroom.
That's
like
awesome.
that was me, growing up.
Yeah.
And so they all fed into that,
That's amazing.
And so yeah, I was already running my own board meetings when I was 10.
I love it. When you were
That's what's up.
So I really want to dive into this more, but I'm actually curious. Like, when she actually failed you,
Right, I was upset.
right?
I was livid. I didn't talk to her for the whole year because they made me go to another teacher, and she would come and she would say, "Oh, Danny is how they would all call me." Danny would be upset with me, and I would run into her in the hallway, and she'd try to come up and talk to me, and I'd completely blow her off. Completely blow her off.
What'd your parents say when they found out that you failed the fourth grade?
She even called my parents and said, "Danny is really upset with me."
Oh, man,
and,
yeah.
it got really personal.
Dang,
I made her feel really guilty. Which
So have
she
you
should
let
have.
go of this now at this point in your life, or does Miss
it's all
Reynolds get
starting
like
to come up in
random?
therapy.
Does she get like random fucking hate mail that she's like she doesn't know who it's
Have you
from?
sent her hate mail? Or,
No,
or
I
like,
haven't
look
talked
at me
to her
now,
in
bitch.
a really long time. But I remember in middle school and in high school, I would go back and I would go in, because I used to be a singer, and I'd go and I'd sing at the school for like special events there, like the national anthem, when I was in high school, and she would always be there, and we would talk at that point. And it was all
Gotcha.
fun.
But like,
We made up.
seriously though, like, what'd your parents say when they found out you failed the fourth grade?
I mean, they supported it. I had a learning disability because I was always thinking about other things.
So this sounds
Right.
like the education system failed you, not the other way around. You had figured out a way in fourth grade to understand the complexities of a business.
Let me put it this way. I negotiated everything in my life all the way up until high school. Everything I negotiated. I've been a really good negotiator.
You never took
Nice.
anything at its face value. Like,
No.
is there any awesome stories of like you failing a test or doing bad on a test and getting them to bump up the grade?
100%.
Give me one. I want to hear one.
I remember one time I was in it was in high school, and it was math or whatever. It was English. I don't remember what it was, but I think I had like a 10. I didn't even think that was possible.
I've been in similar situations.
I've
with
got
grades that
I
low.
got a 12.
Yeah.
I got a 12 on a
Out of
chemistry.
100.
Yeah, on a chemistry test.
But I'm
Yeah.
not talking about a test. I'm talking about the
Like
final
the
grade.
class.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
For the semester.
I got one on a test, not on like final grade.
So I remember it was in high school. I was in 10th grade, and it was English class, and the teacher said, "Yeah, your final grade for the semester is a 10." And I looked and I was like, "Wait, how's that even possible to have a 10?"
You're like out of 10. Thank you.
10 out of 10, exactly.
Wait, what class is this?
It was English,
Oh, that's bad.
Oh man.
That's bad.
and I can talk my way through anything.
I know.
Right, yeah.
except this podcast.
No.
Oh man. Except those cold motherfuckers at your school that you grew up in.
No.
Wait,
man.
so
Yeah.
how'd you fix it? How'd you fix it?
I think I sang her a song.
And what did she do? She gave you a
I
20?
serenaded her, and then she said she
Here's an
asked the
11.
class. She asked the class. She said, "I want Frost to host a debate." within the class.
So this was
to make up
essentially like
extra
quote unquote
credit.
extra credit. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything that I could have done to save me. Like, I think at the end,
You were throwing a Hail Mary.
I was throwing a Hail Mary, and I ended up passing.
She passed you.
Yeah, she passed me.
That's great.
And
So to your credit, you can talk your way through anything.
no, 100%. Mostly.
It worked. Yeah.
Mostly. Well, and then
So you hosted the debate.
Well, and then I flunked a math course and I got kicked out of Allstate, and that was pretty bad.
I'm sure.
Because that teacher did not. She was not budgeting.
Why'd you fail
I remember
it?
her name, Miss Burchard.
Did you fail it because you didn't care, or it just didn't click?
I didn't care. I never went to class.
What type of math was it? I'm curious.
Oh, stupid! Like, what's the beginning course?
Oh,
like algebra or
yeah,
some shit. Like
pre-algebra probably.
Pre-algebra. Like the math, but like they haven't even started introducing letters yet into math.
This is like the level of math that every Jew is pre-programmed with.
And I remember her saying, "Danny, you can't negotiate your way out of this.
That's
not in my
amazing.
class." Just to prove my point.
Oh.
And that one hit like a ton of bricks because I had to drop out of Allstate.
What does that mean? Because for people that don't know.
Texas, as Kyle will attest to, is Texas is big into football.
Yes,
and they're big into choir and music and band, right? And so I was in All-State choir, which was like one of
It's like a high level
10
competition.
people in the whole state.
And you had
right?
and because you're grades.
I was like second chair of the whole state.
So
and you had to obviously maintain a grade in order to participate.
Got it.
Yeah.
So basically,
And I
what you're
flunked.
telling me is that Texas, for whatever they say they are, don't care about choir as much as football. Because you know, if the football captain failed their math test, they fix that shit.
All hell would 100%.
Yeah, they fix that.
100%.
Well, because
Very
all of them-
quickly.
Yeah,
They'd get a call from the fucking mayor.
Yeah. Right? They'd be like,
100%.
like, hey,
The mayor
this
would call.
town's fucking shitty microeconomy is dependent on that 17-year-old's ability to play quarterback because everyone's going to come to the stadium tomorrow night.
And buy hot
I'm
dogs.
not going to fuck this up.
Yeah. So you're giving him a C plus and
yeah.
fuck you.
Yeah, give him a
Seen
C.
Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that shit's a documentary as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So I wanna jump a few years and go into what I always found to be the most fascinating part of your life is that you were like a very accomplished, very great opera singer. And when I found out about that, and I found out about that maybe 6 months after you were my product manager at Sony, it definitely increased my respect is the wrong word, but I'm going to use it here for your ability to A&R music. I had a new level of understanding of what I thought when you said something sounded good. I was like, it probably sounds really good because of that. Talk to me about it. Why did you want to become an opera singer? How did you do it? Why'd you walk away from it?
You know, it's pretty crazy, right? I'll give you the short end of it is that I was always the black sheep of my family. I come from a very artistic family. My father's was a doctor. Put himself through med school, went to USC, go Trojans. And my aunt, his youngest sister, is a doctor as well. So
How is this an artist family?
Come from a family of academics and
academics
and scientists. And so when we were growing up
really
as
are the black
kids, none of us went into medical. None of us went into science or
none of
academics.
them.
None of them. None of us.
Gotcha,
We're all
gotcha.
artistic. My one of my older brothers was a ballet dancer for the Colorado Ballet for
Oh, wow.
13 seasons.
Were your
That's amazing.
parents
My eldest-
artists before they decided to go into science?
So my father, in the nighttime, was a sax player.
Very cool.
And a professional sax player.
That's awesome.
So he'd do surgery in the day, and then he'd be part of an all-doctors band.
That's
They were
fucking
all
sick.
open-heart surgeons.
dope.
These
Yo,
guys
that's some sick
And they were
shit.
prolific. They were prolific Mexican doctors, and the lead singer was Raul. And they did Tejano conjunto music, Mexican regional music.
No way.
And jazz music and standard classics.
Do they
and,
still play?
No. And the band was called Raul and Los MDs. Raul and the MDs.
That's
and they would play,
amazing.
they'd play the fairs and quinceañeras and weddings and things like that. My mother was a pianist, classical pianist.
Okay.
So I grew up on Chopin and Mozart and Brahms
So
and
you grew up in the
Rachmaninoff
fine arts.
and
With like, yeah.
always exposed to that. But my father, always encouraged us to, follow our dreams and and never have a safety net. You know what I mean? So
Right, because he decided to become a doctor and had all the money in the world and was like, fuck, I should have been
well, not necessarily. He didn't have all the money in the world because he was raising 7 kids. So,
Right.
and putting everyone through college. So my
he sounds
father,
like a legend.
my father wanted to be a pro baseball player, and he could have, but he put he threw out his arm. And so then he said, "Fuck it, I'll just go and I'll go to med school." And he put himself through that.
Wow.
And so I think there was always that part of him that was just very, very competitive in
he
sports
still
and
here?
stuff.
Is he still-
No, he's dead. And so I don't think he wanted us to be in sports because he knew that was who he was, and he's very controlling. So he's like, "Fuck it,"
And it's
I'll
volatile.
let them do whatever the fuck they want.
Sports are
sure,
volatile
yeah.
because
Yeah,
if you get injured, you're fucked.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
grew up to believe it or not, we grew up in ballet lessons, and I danced ballet.
That's
I
amazing.
stayed short, and I got fat because I like my breakfast tacos. And my brother continued to grow, and he grew taller, and he became a professional ballet dancer. My father knew nothing about ballet.
But you
He just
have
fucking
an
did it.
amazing voice.
So I got into in seventh or eighth grade PBS. It was 1998.
You were in 7th or 8th grade in 98.
Yeah, do the math. And
Yeah,
and
where's that Jew math now, Matt?
yeah, exactly. Where is it?
76.
So at that point,
you were born
France,
82, right?
What happened in '98 in the sports for
Yankees
sports
won the World
fanatics?
Series.
Wait, sorry, rephrase the question.
France had won the World Cup.
Oh, no, the
Oh,
guy.
was this in '98 or was this?
No, you're right. 98. The fucking dude shot the soccer player in the World Cup.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. So what happened was it was France versus England. If you want to fact check me, it was the World Cup, and the French forward missed a penalty kick that lost them the match, and England moved on to the next round. That player got shot after the match.
That's some fucking Russian shit right there.
It was crazy.
Well, as
That's
a way to
crazy.
celebrate the French win, they had the 3 tenors perform under the Eiffel Tower. You know, Pavarotti.
Yeah.
Placido
Oh, wow.
Domingo, Jose Carreras, and it was internationally televised on PBS. And I just happened to be home that evening watching them on PBS, and I was hooked.
Oh,
Like
That's
what
really
seventh
cool.
grade? What seventh grader actually gets hooked on opera? I was hooked. I had never heard it before.
No, it's just destiny
These
at that
guys of
point.
larger than life in size and in voice.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but I want to do that. And I
That's
called my
awesome.
dad and I said, "What do we do?" And he said, "Maybe you take voice lessons."
I love
I was
it.
already in choir. I wanted to be an opera singer.
It sounds very similar to Alexis's path. Like her granddad brought her to an orchestra, and she sat and watched the orchestra, and at the end of it was like to her granddad, I want to play that instrument. And it was a bassoon. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's fate.
Yeah, exactly. It's fate, 100%. It just, but then you really took it.
I started growing into the voice, and then my teacher said no. You know, they called my dad. They said, "Dr. Hernandez, like your son has a really good voice, and he should start taking private voice lessons." And I started taking private voice lessons, and
You
went
sung
into
in
a
college, right?
fine arts high school, and then I went to college. I went to the Boston Conservatory.
Right,
That's awesome.
and you were there on a ride.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
so
awesome.
and then so what after college did you decide
I've
to
never.
put it
Let's
down?
just put it very, very clearly. I hate school.
All
I
right,
hate
that's fair.
school.
Yeah, same.
I hate structure. I get antsy. I
That's
can't.
so
I can't-
fascinating because you were such a company man for so many years.
Yeah, but I asked them ask anyone at the company how long I was at my desk for one point.
Oh, yeah.
Hated it. I like to be doing things. I'm a people person. I like to go out and
I'm
make
super
deals.
similar. I also don't like school, which is different from
Right?
saying that. Which is different from saying I don't like learning because I
Right.
love learning, but like the structure of like the education system right now, it just never really benefited me because that's not really how I learn either. And so I'm super similar. My whole family's in education also, and so like
Yeah,
we
so you
actually have like
probably-
really similar like upbringings. Like I'm also the youngest, black sheep, only one in my family that didn't
How
do what
many
everybody else.
siblings do you have?
I'm the youngest of 3.
Okay.
I'm the oldest.
So
I'm the lexicon.
the lexicon.
Could have fooled me.
Yes,
I know I could fool myself sometimes. No,
Sorry. So
Yeah,
you.
I always forget that you have siblings.
Yeah.
Always
She just
forget.
so my sister actually
Yeah.
you'd find this amazing. So she was in TV news. So she was an anchor. Sorry, not an anchor, a field reporter for CBS.
Okay.
In Texas, actually.
Right.
What's the big city area for football?
Odessa.
Odessa. So she was a CBS on-air reporter for Odessa for 2 years, crushing it. 6 months ago was like, just decided, fuck it. I don't want to do this. I want to report on Broadway.
Wow.
And so she quit CBS on a dime, like just completely with no backup plan. Moved back to New York, figured out odd jobs to pay the bills, and this past weekend she reported live at the Tonys.
That's
dope.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's
Really
awesome.
just yesterday, right? Or the
Yeah,
day
yeah,
before?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Really, really cool. So
Dude,
she's
that's
been
amazing.
Yeah, she was just sending me the photos. Maybe this morning, maybe it was yesterday. I guess it was last night. I traveled so much the last 2 days. I don't know when was
Yeah.
what. But yeah, she sent me the photos. It was fucking sick
that's
that she was
awesome.
at the Radio City Music Hall. I think they were at. Yeah,
New York.
yeah, it's pretty cool. But I think you should sing us 8 bars right now.
No, I can't.
Absolutely
I
not.
refuse.
I'm not gonna allow that either. That's
want it.
awkward. That's so uncomfortable.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
Only if Kyle serenades me on one of his guitars.
I'll get a guitar.
Oh, that we should do. You know how we were talking about doing some like dope ancillary content. That should be what the Instagram content is for this.
Sure.
Is you serenading him and then him serenading you and then
Right.
it comes out right before
Those
the
would be
heated
like
moment.
bloopers.
Just out of context music from both of us.
Exactly. No, that'd be great. But no, that's an amazing run. So did you know though, like school or not school, you had a great voice and it was understood and people got that. When did you decide to hang up the vocal cords for the suit and jacket?
When I moved to New York, I was singing, freelance for a bunch of smaller companies in New York. Obviously, it's super competitive. Anything in New York is competitive. And I found myself being more attracted to like the things that the executive director and the impresarios were doing, and I felt constrained being on the stage. So
Interesting.
when you're an actor, when you're a singer, you have to be about the text. You have to be about the art. You have to be about the characterization. You have to really be in the moment, as they say. And me, I didn't give a shit. I was more concerned about why didn't this happen? Or how do you make this happen? Or how much does this cost? Or why are there all these efficiencies? And something just switched in my brain. I was
you
like,
went back to the desk in the closet.
I really like producing. Maybe I like producing. I didn't know, it was a hypothesis. But I saw this man in a suit up in the fucking up in the rafters, and I'm like, who is that guy sitting up there alone? And then he had people around him. I said, I want to do what he's doing.
Right.
He was calling the shots. I remember he was just yelling at everyone. I was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
like him.
Right.
I want to do that.
Like I can relate to that.
I love it.
And so interestingly enough, in New York, I did hospitality,
Right out of school?
major events. Yeah, I was booking very, very big corporate events for very, very that
What year is this?
1%. Oh, this was back in 2012. Now,
Okay, cool.
we're skipping some time now.
No, that's
and I started meeting a lot of amazing people.
Is that where you
Various
met
staff-
Alyssa?
No.
You met her after.
Well, yeah, much later.
Oh, okay.
Sony. And so, when I got into hospitality, I was working for one of the top chefs in New York, executing his events, big events. And that really opened my eyes into many things beyond just, in terms of relationship building.
Totally.
And in terms of if you want to know someone who knows everyone, you want to meet the general manager of a well-established restaurant in New York.
Oh,
the
yeah,
general manager
100%.
and the executive chef of a restaurant at its worth its salt, meaning a Michelin, multi-Michelin star, multi-New York Times star. They know
Right.
everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. Every
Yeah.
politician, every music executive, they're the stars.
Yep.
And that exposed me to a lot of people. And I really started to build my relationship there. And I realized that I didn't want to focus necessarily on the performing arts. And I wanted to get into commercial music and get into the music business.
That's
That's
dope.
great.
So you're thriving at this point. You see.
I have everyone in my Rolodex.
Right. You're figuring that out, and then you decided, okay, I'm gonna get out of the events, and I'm gonna go and figure out how to do full-time commercial music.
Yep.
And then how did Sony come on? Was it a cold? Was it like a cold?
For 2 years, it was applying to
application?
all the majors.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
For
Wow.
a year, 2 years. And I assume my application went into the fucking black hole like
Yeah,
they normally
totally.
do. And music is fucking
It's
competitive.
just in the ethos.
Yeah,
now.
I would apply for the big majors. As we know, the majors are
Yeah.
Universal, Sony, and Warner. And I would apply for everything, every assistant job, every secretary job, nothing. I would get that automated response, that dreaded.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I
talking
fucking
about.
I get those all the time whenever I reach out for like our endorsements and stuff. because they just get hit up by so many people. They have to be like, thanks.
And then you met someone.
We receive a lot of emails. If you don't hear back right away, like, don't worry, we'll call you. Kind of. I'm just like, fuck you. Like,
yeah. And at that point, I was meeting a lot of people in the restaurant business and working my way up in hospitality, running major events. I was that person that they called for that impossible sort of favor, that impossible reservation, and anyone from Oscar De La Renta at that point to the Murdochs and everyone in between, the Kissingers.
But how did it start?
So I ended up meeting as one of my first patrons, Nicole Seligman, who was at that point the president of Sony Corporation of America, and that changed my life completely.
Man,
that was it.
That's amazing. So then you got into Sony. Let's fast forward a few years, and you have a multiple platinum record with Max.
Yeah, I mean, Sony was a really, really interesting time because, it was that point where I took that first big leap.
Yeah,
as we're talking about.
You jumped off a ledge that
leaps.
you didn't know if there was a ground.
Yeah, 100%. I left working in hospitality. And when I say hospitality, I mean very high end. I had everyone in my Rolodex. I had the benefits. I had everything. And I remember I was talking to the folks at Sony, and there was a temp position, a contract position. I was at that point working at RCA, and it was like short term. It was like, I don't know, a month type thing.
Yeah.
And they were like, we have a position that's open, but it's a temporary position, and it's a month long, and there's no guarantee. I was like, so you want me to leave this amazing career that I have here, or you want me to for a 1 month sort of contract?
Right.
And I remember the HR director at one point told me, she says, if you trust yourself as much as I think you do, you'll be fine, and you'll find a way to stay here longer.
Oh, wow.
And that was enough for me to say, okay, I'm out.
That was enough. Yeah.
And I love.
Do you remember her name?
Of course.
That's amazing. Because that seems like a.
She was a top HR official at Sony.
She sounds like she seems like the anti Miss Reynolds.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
No, her name is JoJo Conlon. I'll shout her out. And JoJo was
integral,
an integral part, and nothing was ever handed to me because of my relationship with the president of the company. It was a door that was opened, and it wasn't like they said, okay, here's a full-time position and do what you want. It was it was very much we'll open the door for you, and let's hope you're not a fucking idiot.
Exactly.
And we're gonna try you out.
I've talked to a lot of younger session players that are wanting to come up and people that are wanting to tour and stuff like that, and my first question is always, really? Like, really? Are you sure?
Right.
You sure you want to try and make a living in the music industry? Like, are you really sure?
Right.
That's always the first question.
And if they say yes, then they have no idea.
Then I'm like, oh God, you're a fucking idiot.
If they say no, I just really want to do music, then you trust them.
Then I'm like, well, you're too well-rounded and grounded to actually want to work in this industry anyway. You should leave. No, you're too self-aware to actually make it in this industry because it's full of fucking idiots who tried when they shouldn't have and made it.
100%. There you go.
No, but one of the things that I've talked about, because I've developed like a master class, like a seminar that I've given at a lot of colleges, and I'll take things out of that whenever people ask me for advice. And one of the things that I always talk to them is exactly like the situation that you described, which is, you have to work really hard. Obviously, you have to develop your craft. You have to have, your priorities aligned. You have to, get your perspective right. Obviously, all these things that you have to do, you've got to do. You have to put in the work. But I think that it's, pretty fair to say that if you are good at what you do, you're dedicated and you're motivated, at some point, if you're pushing and you are putting yourself in the right circles and you're working hard, at some point someone's going to open a door for you, and someone will, give you a break or, hook you up, give you something that you can use, give you anything at all. And that is what you have to look at and go oh, Well, yeah, okay, so like someone gave me a break and like they gave me an opportunity or they gave me a shot or they gave me a chance, but like that doesn't mean that this was now given to me. That just means that now I have an opportunity that I can use, and now I get to prove even more than ever why they were right to give me a chance.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's what you really have to do, and like that's exactly what you did, and you just went, okay. And it is a huge leap of faith because like at the end of the day you don't know how it's going to work out, but that's not a good enough reason to not do it.
And I think it's also about like your confidence in knowing that you know it's good.
Exactly.
So for instance,
I think that's key.
and I think the one thing that really struck me, and I don't know if you how deep you want to talk about it, but I know for instance for Lights Down Low for Max, that was really a staple for your career. It was the first record, I believe it's your first platinum record, and I remember watching you be like, this is the one, and really like believing in it, not necessarily when other people didn't, but believing in it to a point that made everybody else realize how big of a record it was, and how important it was to really focus resources into it, and being kind of the ringleader and champion of that record, and then seeing that faith in that product really come to fruition with all the accolades that it's received is a pretty cool thing to watch unfold.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think my Dolly Parton always said it best. She said, and she's one of my favorites. She said, I have more guts than talent.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I honestly believe that
That's
about
great.
myself.
Yeah, totally.
Because I remember, and just backing up to the whole Nicole story, is I remember when when she gave me her business card after I'd been applying for Sony for 2 years, and she gives me her business card and it said President Sony Corporation of America. Now we're talking about the woman who oversees all Sony subsidiaries, Sony Pictures. The president of her of Sony Pictures reported to her, Sony Electronics, Sony Music. Doug Morris, she was the one who hired Doug Morris, Sony ATV, et cetera, et cetera. And Nicole reported to the guy in Japan.
Yeah.
And so this is a woman who is of the
Mecca.
highest caliber.
Yeah.
She was Bill Clinton's defense attorney when he was impeached.
Oh, yeah.
The only female on his entire defense.
That's insane.
She's a lawyer by trade. So when she gave me her business card and it said President of Sony Corporation, I said, this is my end. There's no doubt. This is it. So there was no question. There was, even when I had the conversations later on with HR or whatever, I was like, no, let's do it. Let's just make it happen.
Yeah.
And it was that same gut instinct that I went with and that I tried to follow with every big decision that I made, including, as you said, the whole Max record, when it wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say it wasn't a priority, but I remember looking at the data of the record and it wasn't a focus at that point for anyone. And I remember making the case that we should focus on that. And at the end of the day, I like to think that what I don't have in academics or what I might not have in structure or whatever, I do have, and I can bring by just connecting people and bringing people to the fucking table.
Yeah.
And I can rile everyone up and say, guys, this is why we should pay attention to it. And I can get you any person at the table. That's never been an issue for me, even when I was a kid and those people were ambassadors and presidents. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I was 10. So it's using that same technique that I've been really, I think, fostering myself. I was in fourth grade, but I was already beyond fourth grade in my head. Mm-hmm. I was already beyond. I was in my office half of the time.
Yeah.
In a fourth grade classroom.
No, I mean that's like the most fascinating thing I've ever heard.
Natural. It came natural to me, and not the academics. I hated it. I hate it still.
But the people working,
and the networking, and the negotiating, and saying this is why you should care about it. And when that happened, and when we got people's attention on the record, everyone went for it.
Yeah, I mean that's just incredible. I want to, and I feel like we're doing more of a interview-styled podcast here than we normally do. Yeah, but no.
Am I bringing that out?
Yeah, you are. I love it. But I want to.
But it's good because people don't give a shit about anything else. You want to, I don't know, make things interesting.
People care about Kyle's quibs a lot.
There you go.
Do they?
Yes. Have you not seen the Facebook messages?
Nah, no. I avoid all that. have absolutely no
You
idea.
should see what Joyce.
Wait, is there a fan club now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Joyce is fostering it. It's pretty funny.
I like you need to make
My
buttons.
personality is like way too delicate to feed into any of that. I'm not going to look at any of them.
You want to know? Have I told you why Mike Tyson doesn't work out anymore?
No.
He said.
Oh yes, because he's afraid he feels too much like a god whenever he. Yeah,
Straight up,
This
he
is
said
a real
that.
quote. This is
a real quote from Mike Tyson.
He's like, "This is why I don't train
Joe Rogan
anymore."
goes, "Why are you looking fat, man? Why are you looking like you
why don't you train
slacked
anymore?
And he just says to Joe Rogan, the straight dead face, "Man, if I started working out again, I'd feel like a god, and that's just dangerous for me."
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's Mike Tyson.
That's a Kanye quote.
Totally is. It absolutely
But
is.
that they're at a different level. They're not even on this earth.
Those people are just they're just in a different universe.
Yeah,
Completely different universe.
I want to focus on a more sensitive topic for a moment. I've been waiting to get here because I think it's incredible.
You're not gonna make me cry, man. What is it, Cuba Gooding Jr. and
Oh yeah. Right.
I'm not gonna cry, man. I'm not gonna cry. Damn it! I said I'm not gonna cry.
Oh man, I love Cuba Gooding Jr. He was
You know what I'm
great
talking
as
about?
OJ.
Yes, obviously.
He was great as OJ.
Not
He
gonna
was
cry,
great,
man.
yeah.
But in the midst of all of this incredible accolades and ability to navigate the Sony corporate seas, you had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
How did you deal with that? I mean, you and me are pretty close friends now, and I move 100 miles a minute or 150 miles a minute, as I've said to you on a text before. If something like that had happened to me, I don't think I'd be able to keep the house, right? Because everything's such a delicate game of Jenga that if anything is not moving at the right speed, it all crumbles. So I find it incredible that while you were dealing with that, you were able to keep the relationships, the momentum, and beat it, and then come back even stronger. And I just want to understand how you did that, because you said that like the Mike Tysons and the OJs are on another planet. I mean, that is incredible to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I don't. Shit. You know, it goes back to my childhood when we were kids. My dad was a doctor. Everything. When my dad had cancer, he had cancer himself. My dad had a way of explaining things in a very like scientific, methodical way, but with a sense of charm, so that you as children, you didn't freak out, but you didn't freak out, but you understood what was
Like, it was
going
never
on.
above you. You got it. Like,
Yeah, type thing. And so when we were kids growing up, and we'd break an arm, or I'd cut up. So one of us would cut open our fucking arm because we fell off a tree or whatever.
Yeah.
Most parents would freak out and they'd call 911 or they'd call the ambulance and rush you to the hospital. And for us, it was just like, let me just call my dad and see, and he would troubleshoot it while he was at the office and say, "You'll be fine. Just wait there. I'll be home in a little bit, or I'll be home later on," type thing. Or everything could be cured with chicken soup. Most ailments could be cured with chicken soup.
I feel that way today.
And
I definitely feel that.
and prune juice and Gatorade and sleep.
Yeah.
And sleep. And that's how he was.
Yeah.
Where most patients would ask for a pill, he was very anti-drugs, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so I think when it happened to me growing as an adult and I was in,
And
you
this
know,
was
Sony.
what, 2000?
This is, 2006. I just gotten my first big promotion at Sony the same week that I found out.
Were you feeling sick and queasy and you went to get a checkup?
No. So I had so for everyone listening, I had lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was stage 4 by the time that they found it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you knew.
Oh,
and
wow.
I found a lymph node, my left lymph node here. You can't see the scar, but from the biopsy. But I had a lymph node that was swollen and kept getting larger and larger. I was in Paris on vacation, and I felt the lymph node getting hard, and I thought, it's just a swollen gland, and I'll get it checked out. You know, when you're kids, you get the swollen glands.
Sure, yeah.
And it kept getting larger and larger, and of
On
course,
this trip.
and by this time my father's already gone, deceased. So I called my aunt, who's a doctor, and she says, "Oh, just have it checked out." And it kept getting larger and larger.
Within like a week or
Within
like
2-3 weeks, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then by the time I got home, it was probably the size of like a lemon. It was massive,
man.
and it was rock hard. And so we went through all the tests, and it was a very, very brutal process of all the tests. And then, the insurance companies are a different fucking story. They're a pain in the ass.
yeah.
And so you can't just go for a CAT scan or a PET scan. You have to go through
do the process.
an ultrasound, which makes zero fucking sense.
Yeah, this is not
Right?
yeah.
From a cellular level, we know it just doesn't make sense. So in order to get covered, you have to go through the ultrasound. And then after that, the results have to come in, which takes however long. And then you have to take an x-ray. And then by then, now I realize how people fucking die.
Yeah.
Because
oh, yeah.
while they're getting their insurance fucking approved, thank God for Sony, because we had really good insurance.
Right.
Thank you, Sony. But seriously, it was like, it took 3 weeks to find out what it was. And at the same time, I just got a huge promotion. And I guess it's a character of who I am, or part of who I am. I was not concerned about the cancer. I was concerned about my career.
Right.
How fucked up is that? And at that point,
No, but honestly, it's probably what saved your life.
yeah, no, 100%.
Because the stress that could have compounded in your mind.
Well, yeah,
from it.
and I wanted to do a good job, and again, I had really great mentors and bosses at that time, and I let them know what was going on because I was out a lot getting tests, and then we found out that that it was in fact lymphoma and that I had to start chemo. And
Well, but stage 4 is like.
Yeah,
like
I mean, it was pretty aggressive. It was everywhere. It was
but
everywhere in my body.
I'm saying, like, what's the survival rate on?
Actually, lymphoma is actually, I don't want to say that it's, comparatively, it's like apples to oranges compared to anything else, but it's like if you were to get a cancer, God forbid, lymphoma is one that you would probably have a much
stage
better,
4.
yeah, at a much better chance.
Got it.
It's a very, very interesting cancer. It's a blood cancer. And so, but
That's why you were swelling up
that's
because of blood.
correct.
Gotcha.
And by that time, then they test your bones, which is the marrow, which is what produces the blood, and it had spread to my bones. They pulled some part of part of my hip bone to test it, and at that point they said, okay, they escalate it when it's in your bone because that's where it starts.
Right, and that's when
wow,
insurance and protocol doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, at that point, I mean,
Yeah.
it was just, but for me, it was very matter of fact when they told me, and I was like, okay, what are the next steps?
Sure.
For me, it didn't sink.
Did it ever?
Much later, 6 months ago, it did. Years later, after I was in remission. And you always have this chip over your shoulder. You feel a bump or you're sick, and then you always think
it's after
the
you
worst
got over
thing.
it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? Obviously, this is not. I'm not comparing it, but in a similar way, I can see that because when I've skydived once, right? When I jumped out of the plane, I felt the rush of it. I didn't comprehend what I was doing. But then when they pulled the parachute, and I realized that I was gliding in air, and all that had to happen was a clip fall off, and I go falling, I start freaking out.
Yeah, that would freak me out also.
Right?
Yeah.
But like similarly, it was the charge to beat it. You were like focused.
100%.
Right? And then once that happened and you were in your 5-year period, right? Because for people listening that aren't aware, when you beat the 5 years of remission, that's when you're pretty safe.
Yeah, I'm not
right?
even there yet.
Right. But when you were getting into what? Years 2 and 3, that's when it started
Exactly. That's when it started to hit me.
Because you're far enough away from it, but not too far enough away.
And everyone is different,
Yeah.
right? Like the way that I handled it is, I'm sure, different than a lot of the way that other people would handle it. For me, it was very much like I'm going to stay at work, and some people can't. They don't have the energy to do
Sure.
it. And to
But
each
it
their
never
own. For
stressed
me,
you out in the moments.
No.
Do you think that your like initial
Again, for me, it was work. It was
Right.
letting them
Right.
down, letting down my artists.
Do you think your initial mentality and kind of response to it came from like a lot of how your dad reacted whenever you guys were growing
Yeah.
up, whenever you guys got sick? Like
100%.
that's probably just ingrained in you.
Yeah.
Just was second nature to just respond pretty calmly and just be like, okay, like
Yeah.
how can we deal with this now?
I think the hardest part, to be very honest, was not how I felt. It was like telling my mother
Oh,
and telling my
yeah.
sisters. You know what I mean? That hurt me more than me. I mean, the
You
fact
were like,
of me
I'm going to be
knowing-
fine.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, my father, we had lost my father and all of that. But my mother was also very, very a doctor's wife, very methodical. Okay, we're going to get through this. What do you got to
Right.
do? What are we going to do?
Because
Have
she'd
you-
probably seen it all over the
Yeah,
years.
have you
I mean,
have you
like,
read
yeah.
Joe Biden's book about his son?
No, but talk about someone who's
So gone through it.
lived.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read the book. I was dude,
Uncle
bawling.
Joe,
I
yeah.
was bawling out reading it.
Unreal.
But like Bo, his son that
Yeah.
passed from it, like that was the big takeaway that he always said, that Joe said, that Bo would always say, was like, "Don't worry about me, Dad. I'm gonna be fine.
Yeah.
You go be the vice president." You know, like.
Yeah. No, 100%.
That's insane.
Right, and
I
like,
can't even fathom
and like
that.
before that, like like not to veer off topic too much, but like the crazy thing is like before that book, and he talks about it in the book. He talks about like his understanding that this book was probably going to change his financial situation, but like they were not rich, right? The Bidens. The book actually has made them more money than they've ever had in their life, and a lot of Bo's testing and surgery and stuff was paid for by the Obamas. Because I don't know.
I heard about that.
Right, because Barack made a fortune off of his book before he was even in politics. And if you read Becoming, Michelle Obama's book, she talks about it in it, how he was able to get into politics at such a young age because he was so successful as an author about his life story coming like as a black man in the world, and his story and his journey. And that book is what covered a lot of their costs, so he could be a politician in Chicago at 22 and not care about the fact that he was making $5,000 a year as a politician.
Oh, yeah.
And that success, and Joe talks about, is like Joe didn't take the money for a while until it was at a point where like it was mortgaging his house or getting help. And he talks about it. You need to read the book because as much as it is about Joe and his son, it resonated the exact same sentiment that you had about the healthcare system, and how he was just like, how is this how it works? Like, my son needs help. He needs this. Yep. He needs this this test, right?
Yeah. Had it not been for my insurance, I don't know how people survive, and they don't. They go bankrupt or they die.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
How
right?
How do you do?
Because we live, our Medicare system is a for-profit system, and so it's flawed from the start.
Yes.
So like that is where all this red tape, this
100%.
procedural red tape comes from, is the fact that it's a for-profit industry still, which is why healthcare reform is always such a big issue in this country, and why so many people are pushing for it, because like whenever you create something that's sole purpose is to make money first beyond doing all of the other things that it does, it changes their perspective and how you're able to do something.
Capitalistic society.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Is that the best societies are not necessarily absolution of any form of society. Obviously, communism is not great. Socialism isn't great. But to the same point,
having the balance,
exactly. Right. Like I'm a firm believer that absolute capitalism is equally, if not worse, than absolute communism. I think the balance is somewhere in the middle, where, as you guys are saying, there's the ability to be a free market, but there's also the wherewithal and the 3,000-foot perspective of situations like, you have a fucking lemon on your neck. You don't need a fucking ultrasound.
Right.
You need a CAT scan.
Right.
You need to
you would think that there would be like you would skip a few tests.
Well, also,
I have a massive mass on my neck.
Well, and also, like, why the fuck do we have doctors if you still have to go through? Like, what is that person's expertise saying if they're still going like, well, we've got to do all these tests first just so we know? And we're like, shouldn't you know? Shouldn't you fucking know? Isn't that your job?
And
like,
you know what? It's interesting because the way that I grew up, it was you trusted your doctor.
Right.
My dad was a doctor. My aunt was a doctor, and you
Totally.
went through the protocol, and you didn't question it, and you did what you had to do. So I have an immense amount of respect for doctors, but in this scenario, it's like you just never know.
Yeah,
you just never know.
No, totally. I mean, it's just unfortunate. I mean, like you said, I mean, a lot of people end up like they either go broke or they die, and that's tough. Like I feel like a lot of people would be a lot farther along in any type of recovery that they were going towards, like if they didn't have to go through so much of the systemic bullshit that they have to in our country's healthcare system. And so
yeah, it's weird because clearly the way it is right now is not good. Right. But it's not like there's a clear and reasonable alternative.
Well, it's what we have right now.
Right. But I'm saying, I guess my point is, like, if you look at, like, a country like the UK that has...
or Canada. Or Sweden.
But their healthcare system is not great.
Yeah.
It's better-ish. But better-ish is not going to change from what you have. It needs to be significant.
Exactly. So what you're saying is there's nothing on paper right now that we can point at and be like, if we did this, everyone's life would change.
Right. Maybe something in the in like the Switzerland area, right?
Yeah.
Finland, what's that area called?
Like the Netherlands.
Yeah. But there's like a term for all of those countries.
Smart.
Yes. Well.
Okay.
No, but the.
I hope America listens to this episode. Fuck you.
No, but I feel like there's like Denmark, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway. They all
like the Nordic countries.
Yeah, the Nordic countries. I guess that's the term I'm looking for. Whatever.
Thor's countries.
No, Nordics.
Yeah, the Nordics. They always typically do things better. Like the way that they do money is better. The way that they do social politics.
Well, and the way that they approach the work week and professionalism and like people's
Exactly.
work-life balance.
Yeah, I don't know what their medical situation is, but I would assume if I looked, I'd be like, oh, that's probably what we should do.
We can assume because of how well they're doing in every other category that they've got it pretty well under control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem that I see in the way that we do, I mean, like, for instance, even on, like, a much smaller scale. I remember when I was in 9th grade, I was a soccer player, as you know, and I played goalkeeper, and I went to make a save and sliced my head clean open on the goalpost. Like, made the save, sliced it open from like here to here, just gushing blood. Get brought to the ER, and they like looked at it in the waiting room, saw that it didn't like crack the skull significantly. It was just like bleeding, and they made me wait to get it stapled. And then I'd get 16 staples in my head.
Did someone like lose an arm that was also waiting in line?
No, it was just like they had like a bunch of people. Like they put me in the same place as like someone with a cold.
Right.
And I think that's like the problem is like to your point, like they put you in the same procedure as somebody that was just like
it was like my ear hurts. And
right.
You're like,
exactly.
Cool, I can't swallow and my head won't go left for 3 weeks. Like that's a little different.
Yeah.
Like. The problem is that, like, and not to get into, like, the political conversation, like, as I don't want to, like, continue down that conversation because, honestly, it's exhausting to me. But I think that, like, the massive underlying issue is the fact that we have a system that has allowed lobbyists to come in and speak on the behalf of corporations and corporate
lobbyism
entities.
is the
like, they get paid a lot of money.
That's what I'm saying. And so it's
the problem is that the lobbyists are usually the statesmen that moved over, and they get paid 3 to 5 times the amount of money that they made as a congressman.
In the private sector, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the crux of it. Having lobbyists, I think, as a profession is actually smart.
Well, most things in this country at their origin were a good idea, but they have grown too far and have grown like to an unnecessary point now because they've been distorted, they've been warped, they've been manipulated, and
they don't fit within our time.
And they don't fit, like because one thing that the United States has never done is scale properly to where their society is. Like our country has never evolved in a proper way to meet its society. Like we have a pendulum in this country, and so far the only way that everyone who gets into office has decided to solve the problem is to go, well, we were over here this way, so that must mean logically that to do this right, we got to go really far over this way now.
Right. So Joe Rogan has an amazing bit about this where he talks about
you go. We're talking about like
it's my favorite one. So he basically says, Frost, that
what is he like? He goes smart, boring,
no,
like dumb, whatever. Like he's talking about. He's like
so he goes basically the way it goes is he says, why do we think looking at a piece of paper that was created by candlestick with a feather is relevant to the times that we land a rover on Mars? He's like, if I went and pulled Alexander Hamilton or Thomas Jefferson out of the grave, they'd be like, we wrote that shit by candlestick and a feather.
Like, you didn't update this shit? That's the thing. It's like
100%. And this is the biggest debate on the Supreme Court. And interpreting these things, and
well, it shouldn't be about. I think that's the crux of it, right? It shouldn't be about interpreting. It should be about evolving.
Correct.
How do you take what you have and not interpret it to today's time, but amend it to today's time? Well, I think that's the difference. I'm gonna go take a piss real quick.
Really?
Yeah, I need to.
Oh, okay.
Are we just editing this out?
No, it's fine. Go. People do that all the time. Go.
I mean, we've done this on our episode before. On episodes before. It's not that big of a deal. No, I think that the beautiful irony of all of this is that, like, all of these, corporate individuals
Right.
that are coming into politics and they're like shifting over into being involved in our government. All of these people that have a lot of money from all of their private enterprise would be exactly the people that would tell you need to adapt to survive. And the way that our businesses evolved and made it to where they are is by constantly evaluating what our immediate and long-term needs were and
absolutely.
making changes to get to them. But then they're also the people that won't do that for the country. Like they won't do that with policy. They won't do that with like any
100%.
type of the amendments or the Constitution. I was just saying that like all of the people that go into government are usually really successful in private enterprise. And like the irony is that they would say that you have to adapt to survive, but they're not doing that in the government. They're staying stagnant.
Well,
and they're going, but this is the way that it's always been. It's like,
it's because the people that are actually in power scare them, right? The younger people that come into government that want to make those changes, when they actually get there, get scared because there's real power.
There's
Except
real
when
power
you're
there.
Alexandria Cortez.
I was about to
Right.
say
Yeah.
AOC is a fucking beast.
Yeah. Well, because it's an agenda-driven entity also.
I think because here's the thing, right? If government allowed, and this is obviously a utopian, not possible in our construct of reality, but I'm just putting a scenario out there. If anyone that was ever elected to public office was said, hey, for the rest of your life, you never have to worry about money. You and your family are always taken care of. Just do what's best. Then their personal agendas for what they need to do both when they get out of office and when they're in office would change.
Right.
Because a lot of times people do things or bend or go into that gray area because they're looking out for themselves and their families, which
Well,
at the end of the day...
Which is not wrong.
Not wrong.
Right.
So the problem is that when you give a human being as much power as you get as being a congressman or a senator...
Yeah.
You have to put in those fail-safes because an average senator makes, I believe it's $155,000 a year. That same senator, 4 years later, can go into the private sector and make $600,000 a year.
Right. Big difference.
So how do you fix that? That's the problem.
And that's also points to
Right?
another problem of how everything is set up, which is why whenever Trump shut down the government, it was such a big deal because you have these things coming up on the ballot. You have these things that people need to vote on. The leaders of our country need to be involved and they need to be able to like put down on paper how they feel. And they can't do that because they're worried about like their paycheck and their money and all of their income and how they support their family is now suspended because our government was shut down by by basically a temper tantrum. And now you have these people who are no longer representing the best interest of the voting pool because their opinions are now being shifted because they have to take into consideration the fact they haven't been paid in 4 weeks. So that's also a huge issue. Like, I'll basically I just wanted to find an excuse to say fuck Trump on this episode.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
and then fuck Trump. But
But-
it's also the constituents that these politicians represent.
right.
And to your point about these ideologies. I remember I dated a girl back in college, and no names. Don't even ask.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
But
Did she have an address?
Texas, you
Did
have
she
to
have a house?
remember. Texas, you have to remember, is a perfect example going back to our history. Was founded by developers,
Yeah.
right? And so the developers who controls the land and who controls the politics are a few developers, within Texas. And when you have people who own so much land and they're also giving back to those particular politicians, who control those districts and the oil and everything down there, the amount of money that is being moved around and controlled by just a few people, because these people, as you said, or to your point, they want to take care of them and their base. They take care of their family. And that's very much that ideology of, as long as I'm good and as long as my family and my home base is good, it really doesn't matter what else is going on to everyone else. Just be responsible for yourself. And there is some truth to that. However, there's a completely other side to it as well.
Yeah.
And that's where you have these politicians who are also controlled by certain interests, which is why you have lobbyists
Exactly.
who then represent these a lot of these private and public companies. A lot of them are in Texas, oil companies, whatever, the
Yeah.
Halliburtons of the world, and they represent only a few people.
Well,
It's
the
only
pro-
a
the
small
pro-
percentage.
The problem is when
Yeah.
Halliburton's CEO becomes the vice president of the country.
Well, and I think that there's
Right?
there's totally that's a massive issue. I mean, like the fact that we've had
Vice was a really good movie, though.
It was really.
Did you see
watch?
that?
Yeah. Did you watch Vice?
I haven't seen Vice yet.
We should watch Vice.
Y'all should watch Vice.
No, I know.
We should
I really
do like an
wanna watch it.
episode.
No, let's do it. Let's watch
Yeah,
Vice.
but I think before you get to your point about covering your base and you're good, I agree. I think when people say, hey, if me and my inner circle and the people I care about are good, that's all I care about. And I think
Right.
that is a fair and honest and real thought process for a citizen. I think the problem is when you decide to be public office, you need to expand the way you think.
That's literally the point I was exactly about to make. I was 1,000%. That's what I
why
was
y'all
going
are
to talk about.
great co-hosts.
Yeah.
Do y'all ever fucking argue or disagree?
We're pretty aligned on most topics.
It would be interesting to have y'all fight more.
No, I mean, the only thing that we would fight on
I bet
is
you your
about
listenership
science and
would increase.
religion. But his views on religion and science, I respect.
Right.
And there's really nothing else
Yeah.
that would be controversial,
I don't think so.
right?
Yeah. No, I was literally about to make that same point. I was literally going to say that, like, I completely agree. Like, I think as a basic, like, human process, you need to take care of your family first. I think
Yes.
that's how people are designed, and I think that it's respectable that you keep that up into adulthood whenever you have a family and you have people that you're responsible for. Like, you should prioritize them over anything else. That's the point. But once you get to a point of influence and impact, there comes a new level of responsibility, and that ceases to work whenever your decisions regarding how you're taking care of your family affect an entire economy.
100%.
You
And
have
now
to
we just
start-
got back to Oprah Winfrey.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
you go.
100%. Yeah, there's a picture. There's a hand-drawn picture of a cow on my wall.
Nice.
No, so like that's the thing, and so it's like when your decisions now affect an entire economy, you have to shift how you think about your priorities when it comes to taking care of your family and taking care of someone else. Like it's almost two different categories now, because you can't just go, well, I got to take care of my family first. It's like, cool, you made $1 billion last year, and if you literally, for better or worse, change one thing about what you're doing, most of the people in this country and everyone in your industry are going to be affected by it, for better or worse. So you can't really use that as an argument anymore.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think the entertainment industry, and to kind of bring it back, is
Yeah.
following a
Yeah, where did
similar.
we fucking go?
Oh, I mean, that's a perfect podcast. For you.
Welcome to the show, man. Yeah.
But I think to relate it back to what we do,
Matthew Medney 2020.
Hey.
2030.
2032.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you his campaign
Oh my god,
advisor?
that'd be so amazing.
In 8 years, I will be.
Did you know that that's like a real passion goal of mine?
I'm sure. I'm not surprised.
Like some type of public office.
Congressman, ideally.
Congressman, yeah.
Over senator. I don't. I like
Yeah.
the ability to really toggle between local and national.
Well, because that's where like you affect real change.
Yeah, exactly. Senators are too removed in my mind. I think
I
Congress.
want to be a
Totally.
senator.
Really.
Oh, because they're too removed. You're like, fuck everybody. I would rather. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
No, so I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast, but when I was in college, I was the state and federal organizing committee chair on the student senate, and with the congressman, the state congressman, Congressman Olver of the 9th district, I actually co-sponsored 3 bills that got written into Massachusetts legislation.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I actually do have a real passion for politics and understanding how to create change on that level that can affect everyone's life. And I have some interesting ideas on how entertainment policy can be reformed, because I think you may or may not know this, but the way in which, especially in California, how agencies and managers are looked at from the law make a lot of sense for actors in Hollywood, but really prohibit the growth of young aspiring musicians legally. Did you know this?
No.
So
go into it.
So basically, the way in which it states is that a manager and an agent cannot. A manager cannot book shows or book talent.
I understand that.
Right. That was based on
California law.
On California law, under actors though.
Right.
For
you can be penalized.
Exactly. And when you're looking at a young artist who needs to do shows at some level, your manager is technically doing something illegal every time they book you a show.
Right. And yet an agent's not going to pick them up at that point in the
exactly.
career.
So there's a conundrum there of how the law is written, and I really want to try to affect change and make that better. So things like that are policies that I find interesting and written in a time that was pre the ability to do things on your own, right? So that was written on the understanding that, well, how would you get your music out if it wasn't on a major? Or how would you get a show if you didn't have an agent? Clearly the manager's doing something sketchy if he's booking you a show, right?
But everyone that has ever even been in the industry for 5 minutes knows that that's how it has to work on that level, though.
Today, though. But there was a time when that law was valid.
Sure.
But now, with social media...
Again, policy has not scaled to adapt where we currently are.
100%.
Yeah.
So things like that I think are really interesting for the music industry and how
100%.
change could be impacted. But with that being said, the music industry today, especially with streaming, has created this echo chamber where a select few people are able to create wins, and it's less free-flowing. As I actually really believe it's less free-flowing than it was when you had to buy a CD in a store. I think then you had a structure and a pathway, and even if that pathway was really fucking hard to get to, it was consistent. And the way in which you broke an artist may have been really difficult, may have been very, very small numbers actually succeed, but you could do the same 10 steps. And if all of them got a check mark, boom, you made it.
Oh,
if
you could
faltered,
look at it was
fails.
supported by empirical data, and you could literally line it out on paper and go, if you do this, you'll get that result.
Yeah, and now we're in the Wild West.
It's hard.
And I think all of us, without getting into details, have experienced that exact thing. You most recently, and we have talked about it. I've totally experienced it. I know you've seen it, and it's we're in a flux, and it's just because digital is less than 8 years old, right? If you really think about it, we're in 2019. The ability to use the internet in the way that we have for the performing arts has shifted canatonically since 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You're the biggest, other than payola, which kind of had a purpose.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. But I will always fight to the end of times about how I think that the idea of payola is wrong, because and I use this example. I say
that's why I brought it up.
So if you owned a business, and let's say you owned an oil business, let's say Texas, right? So you owned an oil business, and I own an oil business, and I want to buy your business. I would take you to sporting games, I would take you to fancy dinners, I'd buy your family gifts on Christmas, and then I'd make you an offer for your business, and you would feel an obligation to take a serious look at it because of my generosity. And I see no difference in that legal form of business and how people should be able to attack music and garner support outwardly. Now, if that was legalized and controlled, maybe in a similar way to how salary caps are in baseball, dependent on market cap, and that depends on how much money you can spend, and you can pay a fine maybe to the RIAA if you want to spend more than that.
Right.
Then now you've created a business for the business and a checks and balances, rather than just saying it's not legal, but everyone's going to do it anyway, and it's just going to be under the table.
Right.
Look, at the end of I'm not saying I agree with every aspect. I was kind of joking. But now we know where you stand on the fence. But it does at least open this exchange, right?
Yes.
And when you're transparent and when you're a little bit more open in terms of the exchange, things are balanced a little bit.
That's what I'm
more,
saying. I think my
right?
point is
what you're trying to get at.
Yes, 100%.
I don't want anyone after my buddy Matt here.
No, but listen, I'll say it to anybody's face, and I'll be public about it. I think the fact that people say that payola isn't real or isn't happening anymore are lying. And it obviously still goes on. It obviously has been going on forever. And it's just like the same idea as saying that kids don't smoke weed and there's no reason to make it legal. Boom, they make it legal. What the fuck happens? Colorado gives a fucking check back to every citizen because they had an excess of money. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
Right. So to my point, when you legalize something and monitor it, that makes sense. It creates benefits for everybody involved. When you try to shun it and tell people that it doesn't happen and it's not real, it only helps the powerful.
Right. Well, I also think that there are only a few key players in. There's not a lot of people who truly understand how music works. Let's be very honest.
100%. No, 100%.
And that's an issue, right?
Yeah.
You can't compare music to cannabis or music to, whatever, right?
Well, the whole industry is kind of shrouded in ambiguity.
100%. And there are only a few people who understand exactly how this works. Let's be very clear about something. 95% of artists themselves have zero clue.
100%.
And it's
Absolutely.
not necessarily how things work and how publishing works and how these splits work. And it's not necessarily their fault because
it is convoluted.
Correct. And there are only a few people who really understand the inner workings of it. So in order to have an educated conversation about it, you have to kind of lower the fucking wall.
And to your point, and without saying any company's names, because I don't want to do that.
You already have.
No, I haven't. But there are companies that I know of that are traded even on the NASDAQ that are being sued because they didn't understand how publishing worked and how the payouts worked and how that needs to be remitted because it is so convoluted. So if you have a publicly traded company trying to figure it out, how do you expect an artist to understand it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a big priority. Now I sound like a lobbyist, but it is true. Like I remember when I was working for the majors, that was a huge part of conversation on trying to make things more transparent for artists. But again, it's only for certain artists that are signed to that label. There's still a lot more. There's a lot of independent artists who don't educate themselves as well or understand exactly.
Or think they know.
Well, there's a balance. There's
100%.
But in fairness, it has, and I think that this might also be a consequence of the generation and the millennial mindset. But if you objectively look at the data and say, let's look at decades, the amount of transparency and information garnered by the artist has gone up so incredibly high from 2000 to 2010 versus 2010 to 2019. It's incomprehensible. So there is positive change. It just might not be moving as fast as the internet moves, so people don't think it's moving fast enough.
Yeah, it's tough to keep up with the internet. It's tough to keep up with social media. It's tough to keep up with all of these new platforms.
I've had like 5 updates since this conversation started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Let's be honest.
It's tough to keep up. Before we head out, let's talk a little bit more about what you're doing now and your company now.
Talk about YAHYAH.
Because we always, whenever we have people on the show, we always ask them like, hey, is there anything we can plug, anything we can promote, anything that we can maybe educate people on, any type of message you want to send to someone. And so like, I think that is a good segue into just talking about what you're doing now.
Sure.
Kind of letting people know a little bit about that company.
After I left Sony, Latin music is a huge passion point of mine. And, I'm Mexican American. And while I was at Sony, I started to create collaborations between the New York office and Sony Latin down in Miami. And I started to network down there. And when I left Sony, I ended up starting my own Latin record label called YAHYAH Music. And went back to Sony after. Now they're a distribution partner of ours globally. And that's a huge endeavor for us. I mean, Latin is something that has been growing. Latin industry has been growing for a very, very long time.
Oh, yeah.
And now the industry is finally starting to recognize it a lot more than they did. And so that's a huge focus of,
Because you're having some
ours.
you're having some breakout hits too by artists that are going
Yeah,
worldwide.
yeah, exactly. We just signed this very talented artist named Giobuya, who's from the Dominican Republic. And we released his first big single a couple of weeks ago, and that's doing very, very well. On the Latin side, we're managing a group called Afro Bros, who are based out of the Netherlands. Great producers. They're the ones behind Ekis, which is J Balvin and Nicky Jam's hit. It has like 1.8 billion views on YouTube, that video, and we're managing them as well.
That's great.
And so really just, growing that out. So that's super, super exciting.
That's awesome.
And then there's a marketing agency as well.
Yeah, we started a marketing arm of
It's the other guy, right?
It's called The Other Guy. The Other Guy Agency.
Yeah.
And we do all types of marketing and product management and creative and digital, and we work with certain select few third-party clients, and it's the same team that also super serves our YAHYAH roster as well.
It's amazing. Yeah, I love the branding because when you're talking to me about creating it, it really came from the idea that when you were at Sony, you would sometimes have to hire third-party people, and you're like, oh, we have to hire that other guy. And it kind of grew from
That's
that,
amazing,
right?
yeah.
That the inspiration for the name came from your own experiences.
Yeah, no, I think that at the end of the day, one thing I've learned throughout the whole process is, I'm a product marketer, and I really didn't fully understand the creative aspect of it, and understanding, the high level amount of creativity that an artist needs in order to break through, especially in today's client. You have to be more interesting than ever, and marketing and creative are very separate in many cases, and then on the side of that, product marketing on the other side, that sort of ties everything together. So the goal for us is just to really provide our artists with really, really high level creative ideas, but then also, what do you do when you have that creative idea?
How do you
get it in front of the right people?
Right.
And the right eyes.
And who are the right people, and who
Correct.
makes that decision?
Correct. And then that's where the high level digital strategy comes in, and then product marketing is sort of overseeing every aspect of the product from the entire life cycle, from beginning to end. And so that's
And you do that with a suit on, right?
I do it with a suit on.
You do it in your office with a tortoiseshell desk and a suit.
I love it.
Yeah.
Depending. I mean, now that I'm my own boss. I mean, I just walk around in my underwear. That's fantastic.
I think that's great.
And my coffee.
Coffee. That's right.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final point before we head out. If you could have coffee with one person, who would it be?
Oh, one person?
Yeah.
That is actually a really good question.
Or a couple of people. Maybe give like
Your top three.
Maybe give like your top three.
Yeah,
in
you got it.
no
Do it
particular
this way,
order.
ready?
In no particular order.
You give us your number one person who's alive, your number one person who's dead, and your number one person wild card. Could be either.
No, the number one person who you would kill after coffee.
Like a Black Widow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly like that. No, just maybe a couple people in no
All
particular
right.
order.
You know what? I love Dolly Parton. I still haven't met her.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
would totally want to have coffee
That's tight.
with Dolly Parton. The amount of hits this woman wrote
Oh my God,
They're
yeah.
wild.
that a lot of people don't even
Don't even get it.
recognize.
She's unbelievable.
Prolific, right? One of the greatest writers
Yeah,
in
I love Dolly Parton.
in American history. So I would say it would be definitely Dolly Parton right now, and hopefully I'll have the pleasure of meeting her. Maria Callas. I don't know if y'all know Maria Callas.
Tell us. Who is
Maria
that?
Callas was a very, very famous Greek soprano.
Very cool.
Performed all over the world,
That's awesome.
and one of the most influential singers. She was the Da Vinci of classical music.
And when was she around?
She was around in the 70s and 80s.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then who was the other one?
Wild card.
Yeah, just like
Oh, wild card, Oprah.
definitely.
I love it. And your
Oprah
first
Winfrey.
question would be, what happened in Lubbock. Good night.
Hey,
What happened on the ranch?
yeah.
On the range?
Now, here's what you ask her. You sit her down and you go, so what was all that beef about?
You know what? If I could be any one person, it would be Stedman.
Oh, yeah. We're
Can I
all
just
trying to
say,
find a way to be a Stedman.
Just find your inner Stedman.
All of us are. Yeah.
Just find your inner Stedman.
Oh, my God.
We're all trying to find a way to be that. It's okay.
Oh, amazing. So, yeah, I mean, for those listening, to kind of recap, when you're young, start with a tortoiseshell desk.
Oh, absolutely.
Always wear a suit.
Always wear a
wear a
suit.
suit.
And believe in your ability to make it happen more than your ability to create it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you were saying, right? It's like just get the thing done, however it takes.
Yeah, I think, even bigger than that is it all starts with the relationship.
Yeah.
The relationship is so key, and it's so important.
Right, because the
being
work
able to
itself
develop that.
is not rocket science. We're not building
You have
rockets.
No, it isn't. And it's surrounding yourself with the right people, even when you don't understand, everything fully
Yeah.
yourself.
That's important. Surrounding yourself with the right people. Staying focused. Well, we'll do our best to reach out to Dolly and Oprah for you.
I would love to. I would love to make that happen. And if you could, and maybe it's both of them together.
Wow.
God, that would be like rock
That would be
star.
like legend.
It'd be like, oh my God.
Have they
Has
ever?
Oprah? That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, has Oprah ever
interviewed Dolly?
Pardon? Maybe.
So, I mean, I think that the way that we make this happen is you get them to interview on Oprah, and part of the contract is off air. You need to have high tea with the two of them.
No,
Right.
Nerds on coffee.
That's right. Well, I was gonna say we'll just take they won't know we're there, but we'll take their microphone feed, we'll record it, and then just edit in our own half of the conversation in
That's
between
right.
their conversation that they're having independently, not knowing we're there.
That's perfect.
Now
So
we're
that
talking.
would be great. Yeah. So
This is fun, guys.
well,
Yeah, no, it
dude,
was a
thanks
lot
for
of fun.
coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We will.
Hopefully
close
that wasn't
this
too
out.
painful.
No, is
No.
it therapeutic? Did you enjoy it?
Hopefully your listenership doesn't tank.
It definitely tanked from you.
Well, we send that out into the universe every episode.
Yeah, every episode we lose listeners because they heard my voice.
We're like, okay, well, for those of us who are still here, we appreciate you. We also don't trust your judgment anymore.
Yeah. I mean, no, literally, obviously you haven't listened to more than one episode or you definitely wouldn't be on, but Kyle refuses to send the podcast to his psychologist because it would only cost him more money if he heard what this was about.
100%.
Yeah. On that note, please don't anyone send it to my therapist. Also, you don't know who he is, so send it to whoever you want.
Wait, have you seen any movies recently?
No. No, I watched John Wick 2 again recently, but that's about it.
Yeah, I need to see John Wick 3 this week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm so ready.
Cool.
All right, cool. Well,
We're
thanks.
going to go get dinner. Love you guys. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.